Hi, welcome to our discussion of family relationships. I'm Diane Farrell, and I hope to be able to address some common issues we all have when it comes to families. During this webinar, we'll spend some time looking at why family relationships can be difficult, what are some of the common issues, some practical things that we can do before relationships are broken, how to repair the broken relationships, when not to continue to work on relationships. There's a significant reason we continue to have relationships with family after becoming adults. Family relationships are an opportunity for most of us to have unconditional love from other people. Just because we can expect unconditional love does not mean that there is unconditional agreement on every issue. Loving others is hard. In theory, a family environment is where we can be ourselves and trust that others will understand and accept us. In most circumstances, the family environment is where we know we can find others to share our values. The people in our families are those that know us and share our history. It's important to recognize that sharing experiences builds shared values and a shared history. These are the people that likely have offered us emotional support during important events in life. Our family was there when we fell off our bike, when we got good grades in school. Family was there for us when we lost our first tooth, when we drove for the first time, and when we left to live on our own. This shared bond is significant in order to have other healthy relationships in life. Having these relationships keeps us connected to them and teaches us to connect to others. This webinar will focus on improving healthy family relationships and identifying what to do with relationships that are destructive. The reality is, even when we know that the family is the place where we can get our emotional support and guidance, it can also be a place where we are unable to get those needs met. Some families struggle with ongoing conflict. Families might have old resentments that they have not been able to work through, and sometimes even seeing others in the family brings up the anger from history. Other times families are in conflict because of external pressures. The stress we feel at work or school doesn't go away because we leave that environment. When a person is feeling stressed and anxious, it's often directed at family rather than what's causing them stress. We've all heard about how anger at the boss is displaced at family members. This is actually what happens for all of us. Another factor in family stress is that families also can have competing goals. There are some family systems that thrive on competition, and the family members enjoy playing competitive games, striving to do better than another family member in job and in community functions. We've seen famous families like the Kennedys with several children working to achieve more than the previous older sibling. Many times this is healthy and positive for the family, but there are some instances that competition is not outward and actually causes problems for those in the family. One example is when a family member is the star and successful in all that they do. If others don't feel supported and loved for their own accomplishments, this could lead to insecurity and eventual withdrawal from the family. Another example might be when the competition is subtle and one individual works to diminish another by discrediting and destroying. Competition can be a healthy thing in a family. It can be different in an unhealthy family. The last issue I'll review is when insecurity becomes a barrier in having good family relationships. Many times it's due to the competition we talked about and lack of trust that develops in family systems. An individual's sense of security in the family can be based on outward competition or subtle competition, or it's based on their role in the family. Many times in-laws feel insecure since they're not part of the family of origin. Sometimes parents who've had insecurity issues can raise children with their own insecurity. This is learned. The 4 issues we described are like table legs for family conflict. They may all be present in a family or just one or two are in place. When these supports are in place within a family, it's a basis for conflict over just about anything. We know the real issue is stress or insecurity, but it comes out in arguments over parenting style. Some of the most common reasons for family strife are parenting. This can be related to who's doing more work and often starts when the first baby comes home. Who got up the last time? Who changed the last diaper? Who takes the child to daycare? How do we split up the immense responsibility of parenting? Additionally, many times there are loving grandparents with their own idea of what the right way is to treat a child. Parenting isn't easy, and couples need to work together to develop a style that's workable for them. At each stage of a child's life, the parenting styles can become conflictual and problematic. If we consider adding into this mix a step-parent, stepchildren, and grandparents, we're developing a system of family conflict based on insecurity, competing goals, and unshared history. This will always be problematic unless there's some planned intervention to change the pattern. We need to recognize that making change is something that's planned. If people want to change and parent differently than their own parents did, it's something that needs to be a conscious decision at all times. Otherwise, we repeat our own parents' behavior since that's all that we know. Next is holidays. How do we spend the holidays? Who gets more time? What traditions do we keep from each family? How do we meet all of the needs? Holidays can be another conflict that's very common within families. Each holiday can be a new opportunity to have an enjoyable, picturesque event, or it can be a nightmare. Many families have 3 or more events on a single holiday, and it's too much food, too much drink, too much togetherness. Family events can be overwhelming for everyone, but for someone who feels left out, it can be extreme. The feelings of insecurity that a stepchild or an in-law has are magnified when there's the pressure of holidays. It's important to set some limits on time with extended families. Another solution might be to have holiday gatherings when they cause dysfunction is to plan specific events such as baking and frosting cookies or watching a movie together. This focuses on another event rather than focusing on the areas of dysfunction. Money is another conflict that's very common. Every person has their own set of values for what's important to do with their money. Whether there's a little money to manage or a lot of money to manage, the problems get magnified just because we live in a consumer-driven society. How do we say no to children who want everything? How do we limit ourselves? We need iPads and Kindles and iPhones and cars and designer clothing. Our children always want and need whatever's in the checkout line. At the end of the paycheck, there's often unpaid bills, and the stress related to knowing that often fuels arguments in other areas. The values that people bring into the family from their family of origin can be significantly different and lead to disruption in relationships. Solving family conflict related to money means having very challenging discussions about a budget and making an agreement. Sometimes the hardest part is having to say no to a child who desperately wants something. But recognize that children need limits and need to understand that there are limits in order to be successful in life. Last area of conflict is around the area of substance use. Anytime there's substance use, there's a decline in good filters that keep us from saying things that we regret later. I encourage anyone with family relationship issues to avoid using substances when they're with a family, to keep as much control as possible over themselves. Ongoing substance use can lead to disconnectedness in other areas that are important to build a family relationship. Families have different acceptable use levels, and sometimes it's not evident that there's a problem until someone from outside the family notices that the use is different than what they experienced. Whenever there's a problem with substance use, there is help available that can help work through to get it under control. What can we do to get along like other families? First, we need to recognize that all families have issues. We're influenced by media portrayals of functioning families and their ability to work through struggles in a TV show. It all ends happily after 30 minutes. They have a script writer. All of their family interactions are predetermined. But we're also exposed to the extreme behaviors of reality show families that are happy, and we're glad that we're not in this category. The dysfunction within many reality shows is the extreme from the scripted TV shows where everything ends happily. We all live somewhere in between the normal world, in a normal world, where sometimes it's hard to get along and sometimes it's easy to get along. All families are dysfunctional in some way. The only way to overcome family dysfunction is to have good communication. This is hard to do because we have to acknowledge our responsibility in any problem. If there's a decision to talk about a difficult situation, everyone must be encouraged to use I statements and to listen to each other, to reflect back, and then to find a sense of humor. I statements are things like, I feel angry when you come home late and we've waited dinner for you. Or, I get scared when I don't know where you are after work. I statements are assuming some responsibility in the situation and identifying your feelings. The next step in that discussion is to listen to what the person says in response. Many times listening is very hard because instead of listening, we're actually planning what we're going to say in response to what we're hearing. But listening and reflecting is a different way of listening. It's focusing on what's being said and sometimes reflecting it back in their own words or other words. So in the first example of, I get angry when you're late for dinner and dinner is cold, the person's response might be, I don't have any control over traffic, or I don't have any control over my boss asking me to stay late to work. Rather than planning for the argument back, good listening means reflecting back what you heard. That would be saying something like, I hear you saying that your lateness is not your fault. Once we listen and reflect and we begin to actually hear each other instead of planning our arguments, relationships can begin to be mended. I know that this situation is very simplified, but in reality, practicing on simple things sometimes means that when the bigger issues happen, we're prepared. It's important we recognize two issues related to family. We love them and they love us. But loving someone doesn't excuse behaviors and it doesn't falsely cover up problems. Love is the base that we build on, and we need to remember why we have these relationships. Last, keep a sense of humor. We all are imperfect, we all make mistakes, and we say stupid things. Recognize that sometimes you just need to apologize and move on. How do we repair broken relationships? This is where sometimes we need to get help. Wanting to repair a relationship is a sign of the love that relationship is based on. We don't just walk away. It's a good thing to work through difficulties and rebuild on a solid base. Many times we can do that, but sometimes we need to get outside help. A counselor can help implement the good listening skills that we discussed and help move the family to a better place. Counselors and therapists can work with families to help them find common ground to build new and healthy relationships. Many times people get so distracted by what isn't working, they overlook all the good things going on. Sometimes the recommendations from the therapist will be to establish boundaries with family, to only talk about certain things that are safe, and to work on this and build on this. Good therapists will partner with families to work together and not force outcomes that people aren't ready for. Repairing the relationship as possible leads to long-term solutions and an opportunity for lifelong support and unconditional love from families. Occasionally, a therapist might identify the family relationship is too unhealthy to continue. Each situation is unique, and many times our hope is the other person will change. But working with a counselor can help us all put the broken relationships into perspective so that future relationships are healthier. We can't build new relationships on the brokenness of other relationships. In reality, everyone needs to change in order to have healthy family relationships. We can only control our own behavior, which means that change starts and may end with us. Families are important throughout our life. Creating a healthier family with others will help improve our lives in so many ways and give us a better future. Thank you for joining the webinar. If you'd like to schedule an appointment with a therapist or if you have questions, please use the contact information on the screen.